Okay, well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'd like to just say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world from the IATEFL YLTSIG committee. I am Joan Kang Shin, Online Events Coordinator, and I'm delighted to welcome Kieran Donaghy to kick off our 2018 YLTSIG webinar series. Kieran Donaghy is a teacher, trainer, and award-winning writer. He is currently teaching and training at UAB Languages Autonomous University of Barcelona. His website, Film English, which is at film-english.com, has won a British Council Elton's Award for Innovation in Teacher Resources. He is the author of Film in Action from Delta Publishing. And Kieran is the founder of the Image Conference and co-founder of the Visual Arts Circle. You can find out more about Kieran and his work at his author website, which is at KieranDonaghy.com. So Kieran's webinar is titled
Oh, okay, thanks very much. Thanks very much, Joan. Um, can people see me? Do I go? Do I start my webcam? Yeah. Can everyone see me now? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great. Okay. Uh, okay. Thanks very much, Joan, and thank you for hosting the event and for introducing me so nicely there. And thank you to David for inviting me, and to everyone at the YLTSIG for the invitation. So I'm going to talk a little bit about using short films and short videos to promote values in secondary education. I'll just tell you a little bit about myself and my background, how it relates to values. As Joan mentioned in the introduction, I work at a Catalan university, the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona. I work in the language school of the university. I teach university students, some of them are teenagers, but I mainly teach older learners from about 60 to 85, so probably a little bit different from the profile of your students. And one of the things that I enjoyed very much with the old learners, they're very enthusiastic, hard working. And they've obviously got a high level of motivation motivation, of intrinsic motivation. They don't need any certificate. And the exams and the credits, so they're there because they want to be there. And one of the things I've noticed about them is that their values very often are very different from those of the younger learners, and I wondered why that might be, and I investigated a little bit about values in language education. Joan mentioned as well that I've got a website, Film English, a resource site for teachers. Many of the lesson plans on Film English are designed around films which promote values in some way, which promote empathy, compassion, kindness. So I became interested in writing materials related to values education as well. And all of the films that I'm going to show you today, and all the different techniques and activities, you can find lesson plans designed around all of the films at Film English. And as Joan also mentioned, I'm the co-founder with Anna Witcher of the Visual Arts Circle, which is a community of practice for language teaching professionals who are interested in using the visual arts in language education. I think the visual arts are very, very good at fostering values, getting students to explore values. So the address of that website is visualartscircle.com. This is an overview of the session. First of all, just going to look very quickly at why values are important in language education. I think probably everybody here would agree that they are. Not everybody in the world of education would agree, but I think the people at this webinar agree. We'll have a look at that. We'll look at universal values and global values very quickly. Then we'll look at why short films and videos are effective in values education. And then the main part of the webinar will be on activities to encourage students to explore values designed around short films and videos. And then finally, we'll look at media creation projects which encourage students to reflect on values. That's actually getting students to create their own short films, their own videos, and in those projects they're reflecting on values. So why are values important in language education? I would say that they are very important. Very often this question is asked, what exactly is our role as teachers? Do we just teach the subject, or are we there to also try to help our students develop as people? I would argue that that we are there to help our students develop as people as well. And I think the YLTSIG has done excellent work in promoting values and in fostering values in language education. And what I'm just going to refer to very, very quickly is the PCE, the Young Learners and Teenagers SIG PCE pre-conference event in Glasgow last year was actually on values education, and there's an excellent summary of the pre-conference event on the SIG's website, and this was written by Shane Coyne. And there were 3 plenary sessions at the event, and I'm just going to refer to the 3 plenary speakers and what they had to say about values education in language education, specifically language education for younger learners. Carol Reid was the first plenary speaker, and what Carol said here, this is taken from Shay's summary of the event, very much that values education is not about preaching, not getting the students to try to have the same values as we have, but to give them choice in values, that they can choose their own values. I think the key word there is choice, that we give students the choice to look at values, to discuss values and decide what values are important for them. The reason why this is important, Carol goes on to explain, is that I was in an increasingly interconnected and globalized world. Values are increasingly important. We need to give students the skills and values which will help them to navigate this increasingly interconnected and globalized world. Joan was actually the second plenary speaker, and Joan's perspective is perhaps a little bit different. I would say she's more coming from the developing intercultural communicative competence in the students, and obviously this is increasingly important in a more globalized, interconnected world. And what I like very much here, which it's one way to do this, is by exploring values. As they explore worldviews, behaviours and attitudes, so that they're more able to accommodate different cultural differences. So very much here we're trying to foster the students' intercultural communicative competence, and we're moving away from an ethnocentric view of the world to more ethno-relativist. And the third plenary speaker was David, and David's perspective, I think how Shay sums this up here is very, very nice, that David recognised that increasingly in course books for children and young learners, values are presented, but very often teachers are not so confident in how they can actually exploit the values in the course book. So, and David mentions there about training. I would say that very much on pre-conference courses, pre-service training and in-service training, teachers need specific values education training. I think that's something that will happen in the near future. Teachers are very, very keen to talk about values, but they're not actually confident enough to know how to do it because they haven't been taught how to do it. So there is definitely a place in the world of ELT for that, for values education, I would say, particularly for teachers of young learners. Another person who in the world of ELT and young learners who's involved with values is Emily Hurd. She wasn't one of the speakers at the pre-conference event, but there's a quote here from an excellent article she wrote on her blog about the roles of values in young learner language education, and which I like very much. And as she says here, hard as it might be and unnatural as it might feel, we need to find ways to meaningfully integrate in our lessons the values we want to see reflected in the world. And I think that I would agree with that point of view there. This is a summary of what my opinion is on this: an increasingly globalized world, increasingly competitive world, individualized world, where there's more and more isolation, more and more loneliness, massive declines in the levels of empathy in the West. The role of universal value education is increasingly important. And that I believe that students be encouraged to reflect on and discuss values. As Carol said, to explore values. Rather than, we're not actually teaching the values, we're getting the students to talk about the values, we're promoting values, but we're asking the students to choose their own values. Look very, very quickly at what universal and global values are. Universal values are not particularly problematic. A fantastic definition by Isaiah Berlin of what universal values are. So these are values that at most times in history and most places in the world, these values have been held to be important. We've got some examples here. It's not a complete list, but there are some examples here. So we've got things like altruism, compassion, fairness, kindness, honesty, optimism, which I would think that in most places, at most periods of time in history, these values have been recognised of importance in most societies. When we look at global values, a little bit of a more modern concept, a little bit more problematic. Here we have a definition. So a global value is a goal or a standard vital for living in the interdependent world. So we're much more talking about globalization here. Here are some of these global values. And as you see, some of them could well be problematic. Some of them not so problematic. Justice in most places in the world, it is definitely a value, freedom, but then human rights can be much more problematic, obviously, and then things like multiculturalism, anti-consumerism, perhaps much more difficult. So perhaps if teachers had more training on values education, they might be able to deal with these topics more successfully. So we're just going to look at why we've looked at the reasons for using values, promoting values in language education. We're going to look at why films and short films and short videos are a good tool for promoting values. And so I'm just going to try to answer this question very briefly. I think that short films and videos are a very efficient and engaging way to introduce values into the classroom. And these are the reasons why. The fact that they're short is an advantage because the students we can have a different activity each time that we watch the short film. The students can engage with the film on a more meaningful level. They tell a whole narrative. Throughout history in all societies, narratives have been used to foster different values, to promote different values. They grab the attention of the young learners. This is an advantage in many ways. Sometimes it can be a little bit problematic in the sense that if the film is only used for grabbing their attention and that there are no pedagogical goals, obviously there have to be pedagogical goals and linguistic goals. Often the short films deal with just with one value or one issue, whereas we watch a feature-length film, it may be dealing with many different issues and many different values. They're dealing with contemporary issues which relate to students' lives, and they're multimodal texts as well. They're the types of texts that students are engaging with their students. They're engaging with outside the classroom. They're watching short films. They're watching YouTube videos. So they're engaging with these multimodal texts, so we can bring this into the classroom. So what we're going to do now, we're going to look at different activities which can be used with a variety of different types of short films and videos. There are quite a lot of films, which mean I'm not going to show most of the films. I'm going to only show a short part of the film. 2 or 3 of the films I'm going to show all of them. What it's going to mean is I'm going to have to leave the presentation quite a lot to play the videos and then come back to the presentation. So if you bear with me, if you're a little bit patient when I'm showing the videos there. So one of the things I would recommend is showing silent short films. There's lots and lots of silent short films. Silent short films are excellent in the language classroom for many reasons. One of the reasons is that they can be used with any level. They can be used with any age, any level. Because they're silent, we're taking off the pressure of the students understanding the audio, understanding the dialogue. We're taking that pressure away, and the students are focusing just on the visuals, and these are developing their viewing skills, which is a skill which will be increasingly important in addition to the 4 skills of reading, writing and listening. Now we've got the 5th and 6th skills of viewing and representing. Silent films can be very good for developing this skill of viewing. Now, a question which can just be asked with lots and lots of short films is for the students to watch the film and say, what values are illustrated in this film? Okay, so we just ask students what values are illustrated in this film, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to a film called Saw now, and we're just going to watch the first 2 minutes of this silent animation. And what I'd like you to do as you're watching the film, just to think what values are represented in this film. You might like to add these in the chat while you're watching it. So I'm just going to leave the presentation for a moment and then just go to the film.
In our societies, we use the word success a lot. And we think we know just what it means: money, status, fame and power. But take a look in the dictionary and things start to look, thankfully, a lot more complicated. Because success is, in truth, rather more neutral and less value-laden than we tend to assume. It just means doing anything well, excelling at something. And that might encompass a lot of different activities. Running 100 meters for sure, selling your app for a lot of money, okay. But also stranger, less heralded things, like listening a lot, very attentively to a child, or being extremely kind to strangers, or filling your mind with interesting Once we're over about 12 years old, we're seldom encouraged to be nice. We're expected to make efforts in all kinds of areas, chiefly around work. But the idea of expending energy thinking about and then practicing the art of niceness sounds bizarre, even eerie. That's why we've drawn up a checklist of 10 virtues that we think matter more than ever in the modern age. Resilience. This is the art of keeping going even when things are looking dark, of accepting reversals as normal, of refusing to frighten others with one's own fears, and of remembering that human nature is in the end reassuringly tough.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. As you can see, there's a little. It's loading very slowly. When Joan and I tested this an hour ago, they were loading very, very quickly. So it's just one of those things with technology. I saw that some of the things in the chat, what you said, collaboration, optimism. When you watch the rest of the film, also when I've done this with students come up with lots of things like that: optimism, collaboration, also resilience, generosity, solidarity. There's a wealth of different values which are represented there, and it tells a beautiful story, a very simple story, and students find this very engaging. One of the things that you can do after this is then to ask the students the question, what values are important for you in your life? What values are important for you? And this is like a values affirmation where students reflect on what values are important in their lives. And as you see, the different values like collaboration, resilience, generosity, creativity, in many languages, in many Romance languages, many other languages, they're cognates. And this, although this may seem it may seem above the level of the students, this vocabulary is often not that difficult.
From one day to the next on autopilot.
I'm just going to go back to the presentation.
At the end of a life, at the end of your life, when everything else falls away, what essence emerges?
So, as I was saying, using silent films, just asking the students what values are represented in the film. Afterwards, the technique of getting students to write about, talk about what values are important to them. A very different type of film, short film, animated narratives and lectures, where we have a lecture or a narrative which normally would be far too difficult for young learners or teenagers. But with the aid of the animations and the captions, comprehension is made much easier. We're going to have a look at a few examples of this, and we're going to look at two examples to start with from a website, an organisation, the School of Life, which was founded by Alain de Botton. And very much the focus here is an organisation which publishes books, different lectures, video lectures as well on values in modern life. And we're going to look at the first film, which is actually called Success, and asking the question, what is success? Very often asking the students, what is success? What is kindness? What is generosity? What is empathy? Helping the students to reflect on different values, to start talking about. So just asking about. Very often asking what is success, or ask what does society say success is? What is success for you? How is it different from what society says success is? We're just going to go and actually watch the start of this.
If there's one thing you remember from
animated lecture now,
remember this book.
And as you watch it, you'll see that the animations and the captions
lucky for us,
aid
an easy and natural
what would otherwise be something very difficult to understand.
Being in tune to your fellow human. Maybe even, the thought of it, turning our gadgets off for a second. I share this last anecdote from one of my favorite magazines called The Sun. A gentleman went to the doctor with various ailments. The doctor asked questions and listened closely to what the man had to say. After a thorough examination, the doctor scribbled something down on the prescription pad and handed it to the patient. Here's what he prescribed. Less CNN, more Mozart. To round out the cure, I'd add more kindness. Finally, we might ask, how do we, collectively, as a people, want to be remembered? What is our purpose? Who are we? I think the answer is built right into the word. We are mankind. Oh, and about that blanket folding man at the thrift shop? After witnessing that moment, you know what I did?
So as you see there, the captions, the animations aid comprehension, and that means I think that this type of video could be used with children, certainly with teenagers. And again, you've got with that support there, it makes it much easier to understand. I'm just going to show you another video from the School of Life, and the question that we would ask here was, what would be the 10 virtues of the modern age? This is the title of the video, the 10 Virtues of Modern Age. So students, what values, you could ask the students before watching, what are the 10 values which are most important in the modern age? To be successful in the modern age, to be a useful citizen in the modern age. And then the students work on those, they come up with their values, and they watch this animated lecture, and they compare what their values with the values represented in the film. Okay, so as I said there, so the activity would be that the students come up with their 10 values, then they compare them with the values in the film. Do they agree with them? Perhaps at the end, afterwards, we could have a vote on the 10 values which are most important to the class. And we're going to go just one other animated lecture, and this time I'd just like you to say to your students, consider the question, how would you like to be remembered? Perhaps just as I'm getting this ready, if you could in the chat, if you'd like to add any adjectives or any values which you would like to be remembered for. Okay, so you ask students this question: what would they like? How would they like to be remembered? And very often they say that they would like to be remembered as a nice person, as a generous person, a responsible person, an empathetic person, for being a good friend, for being compassionate. We're going to watch this film now, in which a writer, Amy Krauss Rosenthal, she essentially answers this question: how would you like to be remembered? And we're going to, in this case, we're going to watch all of it because it tells a very nice story as well. Okay, so if you just watch this now, please.
Nurture them, love them. A child's heart and mind are fragile. As they grow, we want to teach them everything we know. We send them to school to fill their minds with wonderful knowledge, to give them the tools they need for life. At school, they get a taste of what things are like in the world outside. There's friendship, romance, disappointment, embarrassment, discrimination, and bullying. But are the tools we give them enough to prepare them for this world? We have an enormous responsibility and an amazing opportunity. If we truly want to prepare them for the world outside, we must also educate the heart. Because to navigate the world outside with compassion, acceptance, and tolerance, we need to teach them compassion, acceptance, and tolerance. This can begin in our schools, and it can start today. It can happen at hockey practice, dance class, at day camps and music lessons, and it's already happening around the world with astonishing results. If we want our children to grow into socially and emotionally capable young people, we must ask for a balanced education that puts importance on educating both the mind and the heart.
The fabric of American society is being tested. The true story of this nation is being drowned out, and we're at risk of losing sight of who we are. So we're releasing a series of animations that speak to our best selves. Stories that amplify love over
Okay,
hate.
so it's a very nice story as well, but again, how the drawings, the captions aid the comprehension there.
Not just by sharing these stories with others,
and it's almost as if it was made for the language classroom. And the story at the how it ends with that she actually married the man who helped the old lady in the thrift shop. So it's a very nice story, and it's a true story. If I could just, I'm sorry, just one second. I'm just going to go back to the presentation. So the narrator of the story is Amy Krauss Rosenthal. And as you saw, that's a picture of her and her husband. So the man who was in the shop folding the blanket for the old lady. They married. They were very, very happy. They had 2 children, and tragically last year, Amy died. And the last article she wrote before she died, called "You May Want to Marry My Husband." It's one of the most beautiful articles I've ever read, and I would say it does relate to values in lots of ways. I won't spoil it, but if you just look up on Google, if you just put Amy's name there, and "You May Want to Marry My Husband," and I think you'll be very moved by the article. It's a very, very beautiful article. But so those types of animated lectures are really excellent for getting students to explore values. Another question, as I said before, asking questions like, what is kindness? What is success? How would you like to be remembered? How can we educate the heart? We ask this question here. How can we educate the heart? I don't know if anybody would like to, in the chat, if anybody would like to add something about how do we educate the heart, or reflecting on in our educational systems, do we educate just the mind? Do we educate the heart as well? Do we give equal importance to educating the mind and the heart? We're just going to
what you want their painting to look
get
like
students to talk about that, about different ways how we can educate the heart. And we're going to watch a short film which is actually called that, Educate the Heart. And as students watch the film, I ask them to notice, by listening but also through viewing, ways in which we can educate the heart. And what I'd like you to do as you're watching this film is just to notice the symbolism, there's different drawings, different objects are drawn, different things are drawn, what symbolism there is in the film. It's a very short, it's about a minute and a half. So if you're just watching it, different ways in which we can educate the heart, and if you notice the symbolism. So for example, if we see a compass, what's the symbolism there? If we see an apple, what's the symbolism there? If we see hands, what symbolism is there?
That you want to be a cab driver, then you got to be the most impactful cab driver that you can possibly be.
Are you proud of me?
Of course. You my man. I just love everything about you, period.
The thing I love about you never give up on me. That's one of the things I will always remember about my dad.
You said it like I'm on the way out of here, or like I'm already gone.
So, Dad, what are your dreams for me?
My dream is for you to live out your dreams. It's an old proverb that talks about when children are born, children come out with their fists closed because that's where they keep all their gifts. And as you grow, your hands learn to unfold because you're learning to release your gifts to the world. And so for the rest of your life, I want to see you live with your hands unfolded.
Okay. Did you notice, so for example, when we had the pencil, what did the pencil symbolize, or what does it symbolize in different societies? When the pencil is broken, what does that symbolize? It's probably at that time the word bullying is mentioned, so so it would seem to represent there that breaking there, that fracture there of bullying. When we see the compass, which was talking about navigation, when with the heart. Was about love, about compassion. The apple was quite interesting. The apple in at least I think in Anglo-Saxon culture, the apple, the teacher is given an apple. Well, students who like the teacher give the teacher an apple. It's not the same in all cultures. So there's lots of symbolism there. But I think that's a very, very powerful video there, and it promotes a lot of discussion about values. We're just going to look now, finally, in this penultimate part, we're going to look at stories about watching films about people who may see the world in a different way from our students. Now, what we're going to do now, I'm just going to show you a trailer for an organization called Story Corps in the United States, and just as you watch this trailer, rather than me explaining what they do, if you think this is a good organization and what they do is useful in society. Okay, so we'll just watch this trailer now. It's 1 minute long.
So I get off the train. I'm walking towards the stairs, and this young teenager pulls out a knife. He wants my money, so I just gave him my wallet and told him, here you go. He starts to leave, and as he's walking away, I'm like, hey, wait a minute, you forgot something. If you're going to be robbing people for the rest of the night, you might as well take my coat to keep you warm. So, he's looking at me like, what's going on here, and he asks me, well, why are you doing this? And I'm like, well, I don't know, man, if you're willing to risk your freedom for a few dollars, then I guess you must really need the money. I mean, all I wanted to do was go get dinner. And, if you really want to join me, hey, you're more than welcome.
Yeah, and I say that, Jones, that we need this so badly here in the USA. Yeah, lots of the studies, most of the studies in empathy come from North America, and a massive decline in levels of empathy in the United States in the last 30 years, with the biggest decline in the last 10 years. And experts in other parts of the West think the same thing is happening, so that there is a decline in empathy. So this type of thing is important. So it's, as I said, it's people are telling their stories, but often people who have perhaps a different worldview from us. What we're going to do, we're going to watch an example of this in which a 9-year-old boy asks questions to his father. Now, what I do with students is to ask them, if you were a 9-year-old boy, what questions would you ask your father? What would you want to find out about your father, about his life, about his past, about his worldview? And so we're going to just watch this. We're going to watch all of this video. It's only 2 minutes long. Just watch this. Notice the questions that the young boy asks his father. Notice again how the captions aid comprehension here. And just think about how we could use this in the classroom.
If someone asked you for the time, you gave them your watch. I don't know, I figure, you treat people right, you can only hope that they treat you right. It's as simple as it gets in this complicated world.
Hello, I'm Wim Wenders.
Okay, so a beautiful
One of the great things about cinema is how it
sort of
makes us aware
metaphor,
of
proverb
time.
there at the
This
end.
film consists of
There,
many brief moments of life
but again, I think
that
it's
altogether create a
the
unique new space and time.
the captions
Film
there
too
obviously aid
contribute one
aid
tiny
comprehension
slice
an awful
in the
lot
movie
there.
of life.
We've got a very, very
Wait a
interesting
second.
conversation between the father,
Today,
very moving. I think lots and lots of
everybody is a
values
filmmaker.
are represented there as well.
So I invite all of you to
We're
enter
going
our
to look
short
at
film
just
contest, The
one
Beauty of the
other
City. All you have
from
to do
this
is
series
capture
of
beauty in a
story
second-long
corps.
video.
And
Seize
just
the
before we
moment.
watch it, I'd like
Catch
you
a
to just
second
think
that
about the
matters to you.
question, and you would ask this question to students.
What about?
What would you do if you're on
Anything
your
you
way
consider
home
beautiful? A
after a
smile,
hard day at
a
work?
child's face,
Somebody,
a
a
flower,
young man
your
approaches you with a
favorite tree, a
knife and
spectacular
asks you
view,
for your money.
just
What
a
would
piece of
you
the
do
world
in this
around you.
situation
A movie
here?
of life itself, 1 second at a
If
time.
you just perhaps you'd like to, in the chat, perhaps to say what you would do. The students respond to this question. They say what they would do. Perhaps what would you do? Yeah. So Jacob would give it over. Most people say that they would just give everything there. Is everybody the same as Jacob? Would you do the same? Would you just give your money there? Yeah, you'd give Joanna. You'd give it up as well. Chrissa as well. Yeah. How would you feel as well in this situation? To Myrtle as well would yeah give the money. Yeah. Okay. Okay. You'd feel vulnerable in that situation for sure. Most people say that as well. Very often they say they would feel terrified, frightened. Okay. Yeah. So just to talk about this now, what we're going to do now. And so it actually happened to Joan in that situation. So it was very scary. It happened, and you gave the money there. Yeah, okay, you gave the money up. We're going to watch a young man who's a social worker, Julio Diaz, and this happened to him in New York. And his response, I would say, is quite remarkable and illustrates lots of values. We're going to watch all of this film because it tells a wonderful story. So if we just watch this now, and again, as you're watching it, if you just think, and as you're getting your students watching, what values are represented by what Julio did and what he says.
I stare at my reflection in the mirror. Why am I doing this to myself? Losing my mind on a tiny error. I nearly left the real me.
Stick to your choices.
Find peace.
Freedom.
Laugh at your problems.
Keep your feet on the ground.
Stop and look around. Help other people.
Lucky.
Chase everything you want in your life.
Sweat.
My train got no destiny.
You make my every second count.
Kick the problems out.
Never to be alone.
Live dangerously.
Fight for your dreams.
Right on time. Music expresses the way I feel.
Be yourself.
here. I lived, I loved, I was here. I did, I've done.
So, did you like that film? I think his reaction is quite incredible. And any values which are illustrated by Julio's actions? Christ-like, Jacob said there. Yeah, yes. Obviously, yeah, kindness, definitely, Joanna. Yeah, definitely, there's kindness there. I would say like generosity as well, empathy for sure, Myrtle, again, compassion, wisdom as well. He's very, very wise in what he does there, altruism as well, as Joanna has put there. So lots of things. So it's actually, when perhaps modeling positive behavior and positive values there. But it is, as I say, it is a remarkable reaction there. What I'd just like, we're just good for the last 5-10 minutes. We're just going to move on to getting students to create their own media, creating their own videos and their own short films related to values. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to just show you a trailer for a film competition, and I tell students that this is your homework. Okay, so we're just going to watch this trailer. It's 1 minute long. Just watch this and imagine, and just tell me, could your students do what Wim Wenders, the film director who's presenting the trailer, what he asks people to do? If your students could do this. Okay, so could your student do that? Could they create a 1-second film? I would imagine yes, that they're doing that. They're doing that already. They're creating their own videos. They're uploading them to YouTube. They're doing that already. Now, some people will say, yeah, but that's the same as a photo. But it's not. It's a 1-second film is different. You've got movement. You've got sound. It isn't the same. So students react to this very positively. They come back to class, but they can show the film on their mobile phone to their classmates, but they've got to explain why it's important to them, why it's beautiful for them. So we always have to have that linguistic input as well. And then what we can do is we can get the students to create a class film of putting all their films together to create a class film. And what I would recommend is that the students do this rather than you. And as they create the film, they also have to, in the film, they have to say why that 1 second is beautiful, important for them. Leave the technology to the students. Don't get involved with that. You're there for the linguistic support. I'm going to show you 2 examples which a teacher, Gloria, a teacher in Portugal, sent to me of her students created these films. Tell me what you think of these films here. Okay, they're only 1 minute long. Okay. Okay, so we're going to just watch the first film here.
Wow, thank you so much. That was so wonderful. I enjoyed all of those videos so much. If there are any quick questions, you can feel free to add them to the chat box. Um, I wondered if also you can let people know how they might access some of those videos, because they might be interested in using them.
Okay, so as you see there, as the students have created the 1 second films of what is beautiful for them, and then they have to explain why they consider it beautiful. When they're doing that, explaining why it's beautiful, you can see very much what their values are, and in their explanations there, they are talking about their values. We're just going to look at another film.
Thank you so much.
The same teacher, a different class. Again, a slightly different approach here.
Great. Just to make sure everyone can make use of all of these wonderful videos and activities. Thank you so much. So Kieran, really, thanks for sharing all those practical ideas for using videos and other media to focus on values with secondary students. I think some of them you can also apply to young learners as well. So yeah, that's so great. And I know you mentioned it actually with adults too. You know, what's really amazing is that, you know, you really can use videos and media like these, and it all just depends on how you present it and what you ask the students to do afterwards. Great. Yeah, you can see in the chat box. Yes, I
Okay.
think
Did you?
with me
So a slightly different
posting,
approach there. This time, rather than doing the voiceovers, they've actually put the captions there. So it's just a different approach there. Did you like those films? I mean, personally, I think those films are absolutely fantastic. And the teacher Gloria told me that the students got a lot from them, and students who were normally quite reticent in class, quite shy, they participated a lot in this and enjoyed it a lot. I'm just going to look finally at one last film project. This one is a slightly more ambitious one, and we're asking the question, what is hope? Now, this was part of a British Council film competition in which students had to create a film which answered the question, what is hope? We're going to watch this film from Saudi Arabian students. As you just watched, just tell me what you think of the film, if you think if they've done it well.
On Thursday, the 22nd of February. It's going to be from 3 to 4 p.m. GMT, and she will focus on age-appropriate approaches for teaching early years ELT. So we'll be able to discuss approaches for early years, as today was focused on secondary. So please don't miss it. And also, I would like to give a shout out for our event that's coming up in April. Okay, so please plan to meet the YLTSIG in Brighton. And we are going to be hosting a pre-conference event. As you can see here, it's going to be on Monday, April 9th at the Brighton Centre in the UK. And the 2018 PCE theme is Children's Rights, Children's Future, Practical Applications in TTYL. And it's going to focus on applying the United Nations Rights, Child and Sustainable Development Goals to YLELT. We're very lucky to have Anna Maria Pinter and Harry Kucha as our plenary speakers, and they will unpack the what, why, and how of children's rights and the SDGs. We will build on their plenaries with practical TED Talks by speakers representing early years, primary and secondary ELT. And let me get the next.
So as you see, they look at different social issues in Saudi Arabia, and they look at them from a positive perspective, seeing that there is hope there. So these are obviously more ambitious projects here. The students in this case here have preferred not to actually speak, but put the captions on themselves. But captions, I think, are a very good exercise in the foreign language classroom, and they're using English all when they're planning the film, when they're writing the script, when they're doing the storyboard, when they're filming. They're using English all the time there. So it is it is a project where students are very much developing their linguistic skills, but also focusing on values there, what values are important to them there in their context. I'm just going to go back to the presentation now,
again for attending today's webinar. If you want to get in touch with us or keep up with what the IATEFL YLTSIG is doing,
the videos that I've just shown you,
where all of our different sites and social media sites, all of
so that's the film that we've just seen there. What is hope? I'd just like to finish with a quote from the pre-conference event in Glasgow last year from Carol Reid. About this, how values education, enriches the language learning experience, and it has a positive impact on students' well-being and their academic performance and behaviour.
Goodbye, everyone.
And as Carol says, it might just help to change the world. And I think short